Our first speaker is Donald Cameron. He's an optometrist who's been working in Edinburgh for 32 years. He provides a contact lens service for Lothian Health Board. This includes fitting contact lenses for babies. Can you imagine that? How you get a baby to sit long enough or lie long enough to get a contact lens in. Prosthetic shells, cosmetic lenses, and of course he supplies lenses for people with keratoconus and those who have had grafts. He is also the Director of Optometric Postgraduate Education with NES, which is the National Health Service Education Scotland. So he's a lot of experience. He's spoken to the group once and he was excellent. He's been supportive of the group for many years. So welcome Donald Cameron.
Thank you very much, and many thanks for the invitation to be here, and congratulations for having such a good group, a good sized group. It looks a very healthy number to get out on a Saturday, so well done. Yeah, we do. In Edinburgh, the system is slightly unusual compared to maybe some other places. That the contact lens work is not done in the hospital because there's no hospital unit for optometrists in Edinburgh. We have optometrists like me who go in and do sessions and so on, but all the contact lens work is sent out and done with tender every 3 or 5 years. And my practice has been doing it for about 30 years nearly. And so we've got a fair amount of experience of the different types of lenses. And there's been a lot of progress in keratoconus fitting over the last 5 to 10 years particularly. And so we now have lenses that are designed specifically for people with this condition and related conditions, which we didn't have previously. And we were trying to bodge our way through fitting people, and it was always a bit approximate. It's much more precise, and the end result is that I think we're getting far better results with people wearing far longer and fewer people ending up having to go for grafts. Now that won't please the surgeons that you'll hear later on, but it probably suits the patients better. There's always something, you'll always find something in the papers that's a bit different, a bit new, you know, and if you go to California, you're going to find some wacky idea that if you do some strange thing or take some potion or something, this will cure your keratoconus. And so I was intrigued at this one. I'm not quite sure what it's meant to do exactly, but it's something, I don't know if he's got something wrong with his eyes or his body, I'm not really sure what it's meant to cure. And I thought, well, that's California, and then I came back here and just down the road, came across these fellas, and there they are, doing exactly the same thing. So even in Glasgow, we're really up with the very latest techniques. So don't you let the Americans tell you they think they've got anything on us. As far as the new lenses are concerned, I think it's true that I can only think maybe in the last year I've maybe sent one person out of the sort of 400 folks we have listed for a graft, so we're not having to send folks off for grafting, and that's largely because there are new types of lenses available that fit keratoconic eyes. They are inevitably varying in their level of success, because not everybody who has keratoconus and wearing contact lenses can wear both lenses all day, every day. So we have some folks who are doing a fair bit of juggling, you know, wearing one for a length of time, another one for a length of time, or reducing the wearing time. But the commitment on the part of the patient is, of course, huge in order to be successful with keratoconic fitting. It's not really just the professional end that does the job, it's really got to be commitment at the other side. And some folks, quite often when they have early cones, we say, look, you're not really bad enough to be bothered with this. Carry on with your glasses and just expect that accept that you're living with, say, 90% or 80% visual acuity of the rest of the population, but you can get through life like that. And then others are prepared to really make the commitment and get into wearing them. This group, you know, there's been a lot of various studies done on the types of people that have different diseases, and you as a group are a type, and you're a type who are typically very well informed. I was just saying we were chatting about it earlier, I'm saying that if you had a group like this, say with glaucoma, and I said to them, what's the nature of your condition? They would say, no idea, no idea. Something to do with pressure. And if I said to them, what treatment are you on? They say, I take drops. What are the drops supposed to do, and what are the drops? No idea, I don't really know what they do, but they do something about the pressure. Whereas if I ask this group here, keratoconus, tell me about your condition, tell me about the types of options that are available, what prognosis there might be down the road, and when it might stabilise. Now, by and large, you would be quite well informed, and it's just that's the type of group you are. So the picture of keratoconus, if I shine a very nice even concentric set of rings against the front of the cornea, then when I look at that set of rings, there's the distortion. You can see on the left-hand side, that thing, instead of nice, you can see the top part, top left, is really quite nice and concentric, nice and even, but the bottom, it's all wobbly. And that's typical. It's the bottom nasal part, so that would be typically the left eye that we're looking at there, and it's that nasal side and the inferior part that's causing most of the distortion. And then there are various things that we look for, because sometimes there's not much distortion and it's hard to know whether this is the real condition or not. And so there are various things. There's a brown ring that sometimes runs around the base of this part that's sticking out from your eye, and that's called Fleischer's ring, and that's a little brown thing. Quite tricky to see sometimes. And then there are striae, so instead of the cornea being completely clear, the tissue, a bit like if you take a bit of cellophane, it's nice and clear when it's all even, but if you were to pull it into a line, it would start to look wrinkled, and this can look the same sort of thing. And then you get some little scars, number 4, you get little scars where the surface quality of the cornea is not so healthy. And really what's happening with keratoconus, there's a nice even cornea, nice smooth cornea with rays of light coming in from the distance, and they're focused perfectly on the back of the eye, and that person sees very well. In keratoconus, this is just a small cone, right? Well, it's not really, doesn't really look like that at all, but this gives you the idea. You can see when you have a distortion in the central part of the cone, then when the light passes through, depending which path the light takes, it falls on different parts of the retina, at the back of the eye. And so like a lens in a camera, it distorts the image that falls on the film, and there's nothing you can do to make that image better, because there are no spectacle lenses that I can make at the moment that can mirror the distortion that's on the shape of the cornea. And so that's why if you just use a regular soft lens, it really doesn't improve the vision, because all that happens is you just add another layer to that front surface, it distorts over the surface, and you end up with the same sort of distorted vision. And therefore what happens when you put a rigid lens, anything solid, like a gas permeable lens or the old Perspex lenses that some of you may have had, or a shell if you're wearing a shell, then the fluid there fills in, the tear film fills in the gap between the rigid lens and the cornea, and effectively smooths the surface out so that when the rays of light then pass through it, you get a nice clean image at the back of the eye. And that's why the only lenses generally, now there are all exceptions, almost exceptions to everything I'm going to say to you, but the only lenses that work really well with people with corneal distortions are rigid lenses of some sort. And we'll look at that. You get the occasional person who gets a complex soft one and gets away with it, but it's quite unusual. So I've shown you these things, these little changes that take place in the structure of the cornea. And the condition of keratoconus, of course, is not that it sticks out. That's not the primary condition. The primary condition is that it gets thin. Now it sticks out because it's thin. So it's like a tire, you know, kids tire on a push bike where it gets nicked and you get a little bulge. Now it gets damaged and it gets thin, and then it herniates, it sticks out as a result of that. So the primary condition is not what's just called the ectasia, the sticking out element of it. That's not what the primary condition is. It does that because it's getting thin. And we now have ways of measuring the thickness of the cornea that are fairly reproducible, and so we can actually check to see, that's another useful test for somebody to see whether a condition is advancing or whether it's static. And when I look at the front surface of the eye, you can see that the shape of that is quite bowed forward, and that's what you're trying to then fit a contact lens onto. And sometimes you get these little hard, like a callus or like a corn, if you like, on the surface of the eye, heaped up cells in the middle, and of course that adds to the problem, because you've got to get this thing area sticking out a little bit, and then there's this little bubble on the top, and that then makes it very difficult to keep a contact lens comfortable, because that bubble tends to get scratched and the surface epithelium gets worn off, then it becomes uncomfortable and causes difficulty. So the sort of fit, you'll know that when you go and get your eyes checked, they always put this yellow dye in you, and if they're really careless, the yellow dye is all over your face when you go out. Yeah, a real mess. There's absolutely no need for that, it's just carelessness. But when you put that dye in, what we're looking for is which bits of the contact lens are touching the eye and which bits are standing clear. And you can see there, if I... mouse work, oh, it's upside down, sorry. That bit there is touching the surface of your eye, of that eye. That bit there, it's clear, it's standing away from it, the surface. That bit there is touching again, and then it's clearing just a little bit there at the edge, but really probably in textbook terms not quite sufficient. So and then down the bottom here, it's slightly different. So what of course you're trying to do is to fit something with a nice spherical even shaped lens that really is not a nice spherical even shape. And so it's always an approximation. There is never a good fit for a keratoconic fit. So if somebody will say, what do you think of the fit that I'm using for a keratoconus design? Other optoms, if I go to do a lecture with fellow professionals, they'll say, what do you think of this as a design? And before I even look at it, I'll say, good, it's great. They say, we haven't looked at it. Don't need to look at it. They're all okay for some folks. And so you have to then modify them, change them, tweak them, and you can only do that when you see the fit. But you really can't get away, once the cone advances, with regular shaped lenses. You have to have dedicated lenses. Now this is a second type of fit. So there's the first one, which you describe as, we just simply call it the apical touch. The thing is sitting hard on the apex of that cone, and that's going to cause problems if you leave that as a permanent fit. This one, however, is going to be a better fit. So it's not quite so aggressively pressing on, and it's standing away a little bit at the bottom here, which is quite nice. It's moving, it's in quite a good position. The trouble with this is if I say to you, when you come to me, I say, the cone's a little bit advanced, it's protruding a bit more, I really need to, instead of letting the same lens sit so hard, I'm afraid I'm going to cause a scar or that little white blister on the surface. I really want to now do this with it, get it to stand away. Instead of hitting flat on you, I want to get it to stand away. And you say, oh, that sounds great. So I do that, and as I do it, I say to you, when you come back and try this lens, the vision will not be quite so good. And you say, oh, that's okay. And then you come back about a month later saying, see that lens you gave me, the vision's not quite so good. And the distance vision is not so good. It's always better with a flat fit than with a better fit, if you like. And so we're always wrestling on negotiating with you and saying, well, can we go halfway then? Can I reduce the vision a little bit in order to, because I'm thinking what we're going to do here in 20 years. And so I'm thinking, can I do something that will give you a longer life with that lens? And you can see, if you look at the lens sideways on, you can see what you're trying to fit. You see this thing hanging off here. It's just dangling in midair. It's nowhere near the cornea. And of course, the problem with that is, if you, go out on a windy day, the wind gets underneath that thing, it's away down Sauchiehall Street. And it doesn't really fit. In fact, I'd probably say it's a shocking fit. It's really probably not even acceptable. And yet, I have a number of folks who are wearing lenses like this, and I say to them, how's the lenses doing? It's great, wear them all day, put them in at 8 o'clock, take them out at 11 o'clock at night. No discomfort or irritation? Nope. They never fall out? Nope. Absolutely stable as you like. And you go, well, that's a success for me. If they're wearing the lens all day and they're seeing well, there's no discomfort, the cornea is not being insulted, and they're tolerating, I'm not going to fiddle around with it. I'm only going to make them unhappy. So it's very much a negotiation with what you think is acceptable and what I think is acceptable. And I will virtually never say, this is what I think you need to have done. There are situations where that happens, but it's not very common. There's another one you get where you can fit one bit but not the other bit. So I'm sort of quite happy with this. The edge looks quite good. I'm quite happy with this amount of touch on the centre. It's not too heavy. Quite happy with this little bit of clearance, but unfortunately I've got big bubbles underneath here, and if this lens doesn't move around a bit, these bubbles are going to start pressing on the cornea, and that causes other visual disturbances sometimes. Maybe not so bad in that position, but not an ideal thing. But again, it's not an ideal fit, and it will never be an ideal fit. It's just the best fit I can get from the lenses that are available. And you can't really use conventional contact lenses. If you use a conventional contact lens, that's what you would end up with. You can see there, that's very, very heavy touch right in the very middle, and then standing clear in the middle zone, sort of intermediate zone, and then quite heavy touch round about the peripheral intermediate, and then it's just clearing the edge of the eye at the very periphery. It's a big diameter lens, and this is somebody's tried to fit in order just to give them some sort of success. Now, it might be they can wear it all day, but it's not a good thing long term, and that's typical of a conventional lens. And there's another conventional lens. It's not quite a nice fit across the centre, maybe not sufficient clearing around the rim, but it'll cause problems in due course. Of course, the trouble is not always the contact lens. I'm sorry if you're a bit squeamish, but you get those little cysts underneath lids and all that sort of stuff. So you're actually probably, as a group, you're at a higher risk of some of these complications because you typically have other eye conditions like blepharitis or atopic disease, hay fever, and these other things that go with it. And so we wouldn't be surprised to see other issues. You get scratches on your eye, you know, you're taking the lens out, and instead of having a nice clear cornea here, what's happened here is somebody's taken their fingernail across it and scratched the top layer off your cornea. Don't knock it. The surgeons do that all the time, and they're very happy doing it. And we'll tell you about that later on, about why they might take off the surface layer. That's the very epithelium, just like your skin, just like doing that. And it heals remarkably well because you can see that looks quite nasty. It looks as if it would be quite, and it would be sore, very painful. But 26 hours later, or 28 hours later, there it is. You know, completely gone, virtually, a tiny little bit of mark left. So the cornea is made for insult and is incredibly robust and incredibly good at resolving problems that arise on it. There's other problems that happen. You cracks in gas permeable lenses. They can physically crack, and particularly some of the new gas permeable lenses, some of them are quite brittle. I mean, they have maybe a range of 20 or 30 different materials that I can use for using gas permeable lenses, and we tend to avoid the very brittle ones. On the other hand, you don't want the very flexible ones, because if they're very flexible, they behave more like a soft almost, and they flex over the surface of the eye and don't give you the vision. So again, you're doing another balance. You're saying, do I want brittle because it's going to give the good vision, or do I want flexibility because it's not going to crack or damage so easily? So cracked lenses. Protein deposits. Some of you have remembered, or do you still use the protein removing tablets? Yes. Yeah, oh, very good. That sounds probably an older person does that, is it? No? Aye, you see, the young ones can't be bothered with that. I want a new lens every day. I can't be bothered faffing about with this. The older ones say, no, these lenses have done me 25 years, they'll do me another 5, you know. So they keep looking after them. I have to say I don't use protein remover tablets really ever now, just because we tend to say with gas permeable materials, they have a high silicon component, and silicon, you know, silicon rubber used on stoppers or on a rubber band. You know, if you get that dirty, what can you do to clean it? You can't. And so silicon component materials are extremely difficult to get clean and to keep clean. So a lens that's been in and out the eye for 365 days, maybe 720 odd days, then we tend to reckon by the end of a year to 2 years, it's probably served its time and we dispose of it and get a new one. That's for regular gas permeable fits. So protein is one problem. Surface, just other deposits of unknown. There's all sorts of things, lipids and fats and things stuck on the surface. The reason that one, you see it in a circle. The only way you can really see this is if you dry, because people say to me, my lens is always clean when I put it in. Well, actually it's not. What they're saying is, if I put fluid on it and look at it, it looks clean. Yeah, well it does, because the fluid just masks all that. What you have to do is dry it, absolutely bone dry with a tissue, whuff it, and then look at it with a light behind, and you'll see on quite a lot of your lenses, probably this morning, this appearance. And what you're doing there, the reason you get that is when you take the lens out, you clean it like this, just between your fingers. And so you clean away hard in the middle, but you're not getting to the edge. And that's why all the scruff just builds up, all right? And then you rinse it off, stick it in, and then the next day you just clean it all to the edge. It builds up on this, you clean it. And you do that for a year. At the end of the year, you end up with this kind of film. So when you're cleaning your lens, take it out and put it in the palm of your hand and make sure you get to the edge to avoid this stuff building up. It's getting to the edge, so it's inside, you know, get it that way, right? And give it a good clean. These are just electron micrograph pictures of what this stuff looks like when you blow it up. I mean, it's pretty horrendous when you see it. And then just regular surface scratches. Again, it's quite common for folk to say, oh, the lens is fine, it's comfortable and all that. And I might look at it and say it's quite scratched. And they'll say, well, I'm not uncomfortable. That may be true, but then it probably is not a good thing for that surface to be grinding, you know, on if any of you are engine people, valve grinders. You know, you want to be grinding away at the surface of your cornea constantly. It may not be doing any harm that you can see, but the lids that come over the surface of your eye are also susceptible to these surface problems. And so you can have things going on under your lids that you can't see and that don't cause discomfort but can stack up problems. And again, as a group, you would typically be more prone to these than maybe some other folks. So when I see a scratched lens, I say, I know it's wearable and I know it's comfortable, but I really have to replace it, and we get that done because it's not a good thing long term. Huge big things. Now, some people, despite the best efforts with a gas permeable lens, we can't get them comfortable with a gas permeable. And the first thing I would do then is I would try them with a piggyback. And the piggyback is you just put a soft lens underneath the gas permeable lens, and then you put the same gas permeable lens back on top. Now, if I said this to an academic audience, who'd, oh, well, shocking, shocking, it's not just any old soft lens. I tell you, it's any old soft lens, all right? Any bit of plastic I've got in the practice, I can stick on there. And you don't have to modify the existing lens that you've got, just stick it back on. Sometimes you can fiddle around to make minor adjustments to that, but basically if I want to see if it's going to work, it'll work on that basis. And then you stick the lens back in, and for some folks, and I don't want to say this to those of you who are maybe struggling a bit with gas perms because it may not be an option, but for some people it is just absolutely instantaneous comfort. I've gone from tolerating these things, I've got to put them in and wear them for 10 hours, and I'll get in at night and go, oh, and then give them a good go, you know, and all that. And for these folks, you put them into a piggyback and it just resolves that situation. Because what you're doing then is you're stopping this sensation of the lens touching on the surface of the eye. Just a bandage, that's all it is doing. It has no focus. And it doesn't matter the focus of the soft lens you put under. You can put a +1 or -1 or -3, -4. I just put in whatever I've got underneath and then stick the old lens back on. Sometimes you need to modify it if you want. There's some benefits in doing one or another. But anyway, broadly, that's how it works. When you're handling these lenses, of course, you've got to be cautious, because if you're going to make it too hard for folk, it's just a pain. And I don't give folks 2 lots of solutions. You know, it's bad enough with 1 lot of solutions. So I say to them, just use soft lens solutions for everything here. So you put the gas permeable lens and the soft lens into the same pot, soft lens, and they store in soft lens solutions. Because you can use soft lens solutions on gas permeables, but you can't use gas permeable solutions on soft lenses. It makes them go all gooey. So you can work it that way. So any of the soft lens solutions, you see you've got Opti-Free up there. The only thing is that cleaning is really quite important. So I tend to use something like, not the Boston one, which has little gritty bits in it, because that can sometimes just be residual stuff left on it when you put it in. So I tend to use something like Myraflow, which is an alcohol-based one. Maybe isn't as good as getting rid of some heavy deposits, but it's a very good cleaner nonetheless. So that's a soft lens solution, cleaning and soaking. And all lenses, let me underline, all lenses need rubbed and rinsed before you put them away. There is no solution that you should be using when you have keratoconus or any soft lens condition or any lens condition that you don't rub the lens with. I know some of them say this is a no-rub solution. It's not the case. You want to rub it off and get rid of the contamination on the surface of your lens before you put it away overnight. And then there are some hybrid lenses. I put Synergize. I spelt it just as you would expect to see. They actually spell it with EYES at the end. But Synergize, there have been a few of them. Saturn, Soft Perm. Soft Perm was quite good, but it was a bit random. You never quite knew what you were going to get when you opened it. It was like a sort of Christmas time. You knew, what will the lens contain when I take it out and put it in this person's eye? So you'd order a -1 and you'd put it on top of the eye and it would behave like a -4. It was some real problems with it. Then they had a contamination issue and we never really got back into it. This is a new one that's come from the States, Synergize. I would have to say it's the best by a country mile of all of the hybrid lenses. And so what you have here is the peripheral part, which is there. So from there outwards is soft. And from the center here, it's rigid. And by some clever chemistry, they've managed to get this thing to join and not fall apart. The initial ones were breaking constantly. You know, people would take them out and the thing would split. As you would imagine, it'd be quite a tough thing to join. But they would take them out, and some of the other earlier ones got very stuck on the surface of the eye. I mean, when we first fitted them in the practice, some of you have probably been through this, first fitted them in the practice, you know, we'd have somebody put it in, we'd say, no, just take it out, and they would fiddle around and go, that's okay, I'll take it out. You know. And then you get a spoon, you know, underneath trying to prise off. And there were 1 or 2, it was very, very tricky to get the thing out. They just sort of went stuck on like an absolute limpet. And none of the normal techniques, and you couldn't even getting underneath it. You'd have to get underneath it and then go right around it, like taking a flan out of a pie dish. You know, it was an impossible thing to remove. So we had some problems with these, but we're better, partly because we know what we're doing. Not that we didn't initially. You know. We know better what we're doing. We know what to watch for. And this is, I think, the most successful lens for advanced cones where they just cannot get comfort from anything else. We've got folks wearing these and seeing with them who have not been able to wear anything previously, and so they're delighted. One of the problems with any soft surface lens is, of course, the soft lens goes right out to the very periphery, and the periphery of the eye is quite susceptible to change, and one of the changes we don't want for the long term in people with keratoconus is blood vessels coming in. And if you put a soft lens on the surface of the eye that doesn't allow the eye to breathe very well, then there's a tendency for blood vessels to come in and try and provide oxygen to the peripheral parts of the cornea. And if they come in too far, it then makes the potential, if you ever had to go for a graft, it makes it potentially more hazardous. If you've got blood vessels, if you go cutting through blood vessels, you've got all sorts of available antibodies to this new treatment, to putting this new tissue in there, and you have much higher risks of rejection. So if you can keep blood vessels away from that area, it's a much better route for long-term success. So it's one of the things with the hybrid lenses we've got to watch. If it's too tight, it'll tend to encourage these blood vessels, then you have to back off the wearing times and stuff. So there's no cure-all. There is no cure-all for this. It's a question of finding what's the least troublesome. Now, you'll have come across, because a lot of folk come to me and say, can we have laser surgery for this? And it's not an unreasonable question. But of course, laser surgery, one of the essential things is that you have a thick enough cornea to do your laser surgery on. And therefore, really, keratoconus is in fact a contraindication for any laser procedure on the front of the eye. Just so any like walk-in, walk-out treatment for short sight is not available to you if you have any form of corneal distortion like keratoconus. So it's unfortunate, but that's how it is. The old ones, they used to do it just with a knife. And I got some pictures of some shockers here. One of the problems with this type of operation was when all they've done is scarred. I say all they've done, but I mean they've scarred the surface of the eye to try and change the shape of it so that the person, instead of being -8 or -6 myopic, is -1 or something like that, trying to reduce their short sight. I think probably you who have an eye condition that is not amenable to this might think, for goodness sake, why would anybody who's just short-sighted and can wear a pair of glasses have surgery done on their eyes anyway? But anyway, that's a conversation you'd need to have with folk as they walk out the surgery. It's just one of these things. It's like when folks say, I'm going for a nose operation, it's not helpful for you to say, oh, your nose looks fine to me. As far as they're concerned, it's a big deal. And so for some folks, having an operation done for regular short sight is a big deal. They're hugely hung up about it, and that's fair enough. So this surgery has come in too far. You see how central that is. So this person suffers terribly, for instance, can't pick up her kids at night in the car, can't drive at night because the star effect that she gets from streetlights in the winter are so dramatic. So she's stuck with that because we can't really do anything. This one, I think he got sort of lost. He wasn't quite sure what to do, so he started playing noughts and crosses till he could figure out what to do. But it's not a good piece of surgery to my mind. And there are a few of these. I see a few where things have just not worked out, and partly because of the surgery not being very well done, but partly just because it's not their condition has not been amenable to good treatment. And then this one where, well, the story was, and I find it hard to believe, but the story was, because I knew who this was and I knew what the surgical situation was, that when the surgery was going on, somebody kicked over, the tray of weapons that they have in a surgical procedure, somebody knocked it off the tray. And of course, you can imagine in an operating theatre, everything's very bright and harsh sound, and it's total silence, and somebody's digging away at this person's eye. Suddenly, this almighty crash, and this person goes, while the knife is still in a position. I mean, now, whether the story is true or not, I don't know, but it's a good story anyway, I think. So I keep recounting it, but I should imagine the surgeon thought, well, now what do we do with this one? We can't really rescue it. So she's stuck with this thing right across the middle of their cornea, which is a very unhappy situation. Oxygen permeability. One of the important things we're trying to do with corneal, or reducing corneal insult, is to get as much oxygen through to the middle of the eye as possible. Because when you put anything over the surface, you're asphyxiating it, at least at some level. And it's important that we try and do that. And some of the new chemistries are, I say, based on silicon, hugely permeable to oxygen. But, and there's always a but, the but is that they tend to deposit badly. So you get these lipids, these blobs, and they don't wet very well, and then they tend to be uncomfortable. They tend to cause irritation under the top lid, which is another compounding problem. So some of the things that you want to watch for, gas permeable lenses are generally going to be the best lenses. Almost everybody says to me, can I not have soft lenses? And the young ones all say, can I not have the one day? That's what they want. They want it dead easy, which, fair enough. But the answer is no and no. You can't really have soft lenses in most cases. And no, you can't have daily disposables. They're not made for anything like your condition. Good fitting and perfect vision are not always attainable. And so what you need to be doing is being quite confident that you're saying to whoever's fitting you with your contact lenses, is this the best vision I can get? And they'll say, well, no, I could maybe improve the vision, but it would be at the cost of the quality of the long-term fit on your eye, and you might take a view on that. And then avoiding hard central touch. So quite often you come to a point where the optometrist or whoever's fitting you will look at it and think, it's really pressing now too hard in that middle. Can I afford to take that away and maybe reduce your vision? And then you'll be tolerating a bit of a trade there. Depends how good your fellow eye is. If the fellow eye is still good, you might be happy enough to lose that little bit of vision. But if your fellow eye is not so good, then you might say, no, I absolutely need this because I can't drive comfortably, or I can't play, or I can't do something on a computer, I can't see what I have to see at work in order to do the job. It's interesting that high numbers of folks with this condition in our practice anyway seem to do jobs that you would have said, can you not get another job? You know, like, I mean, what you want to do is dig holes. You know, you don't need great vision. That's what you want from folk with keratoconus. Go and dig holes, do things, big things. But they want vision that enables them to work on IT. And, you know, got folks who are editors of technical journals and stuff. You go, for heaven's sake, this is the worst possible job for you. But that's the group that, you know, you tend to be a highly sort of educated group and very focused and an ambitious group. And these are just that's the personality type of the folks. So these are all things, you know, you're trading one thing against another. Yeah, and so just a word about the cleaners. I see it's good you have these up at the back, and it's quite useful to have them. And do take them, but remember, I think most of them are for, no, you got to mix. You got to mix. You're complete and opti-free for soft lenses. So you got to mix so you can get away with it. But the function of daily cleaning, and this is where your issue comes up. This is what the bit you in the main contribute to. Cleaning the thing physically by rubbing it properly, getting to the edge, is absolutely critical to the long-term success. Not just long-term success, but even daily comfort, wearability, the number of hours you can keep it in, and the clarity of vision will be determined in large measure by how careful you are about the cleaning. It takes off all the stuff that, because the formulation of these things is such that it takes off lipids and fats and mucus and protein. That's what it's there to do. It takes the most, I mean, it reduces the bacterial load on a contact lens by 99.9%, so that when you put it then into its solution, you're really only asking your solution to do a little job. Whereas if you leave the lens with its heavy soup of contaminants on it and just put it in, you're asking that small volume of solution to do quite a big job in terms of bacteriostatic or bactericidal effect. And that can be very demanding for the sort of solutions and the amount you have. Change your solutions every day is the other one. Remarkable. I was working in the eye hospital the other month, and somebody came in, and they were actually attending, must have been last year, they were attending the Edinburgh Festival. And they came in with this horrendous red eye. And I said, your contact lens wearer? Yeah. I said, what solutions are you using? Oh, I don't know. I said, well, you know, and I know them all. So I said, what colour's the box? Oh, he said, I didn't get it in a box. I'm just using my friends, because I'm staying with my friends, not lying on the floor type of thing, you know, whilst at the festival. I said, so what kind of colour was it? Oh, he says, he didn't know. He just left the solution in the case for me. I said, but there must be a bottle so you can top. No, I'm just using the same solution. So every day he's taking this lens out, putting it into the solution. Next day he takes it out, sticks it in his eye. And next day he puts it back in the same fluid. And he had been doing this for about 10 days. And lo and behold, he had a red eye. And he was grumpy at me because I said I couldn't treat him with anything that was going to cure his red eye because he was performing that night. And I think, well, for goodness sake, you know, how careless can you be? And he was just a short-sighted contact lens wearer. But nonetheless, the importance of sterility and care and washing your hands, it really can't be overstated, especially in keratoconus. Partly because, of course, when you lose your contact lenses, your vision is so poor because you can't then wear specs. Most folk who are short-sighted, okay, if they have an infection, they take them out and put their specs on. They don't look great, but Saturday night isn't so cool. But nonetheless, they can function and they can get through a day. That isn't always open to you. So it's all the more important you take care. So the surface-acting cleaner, make sure you get that. If you're just using rigid gas permeables, then Boston, I think, is a great cleaner, or Bosch & Lomb's version, it's the same thing. But, you know, it's like Jif, or Sif, as we're calling it now, because the French can't say Dieu. So, Sif. And you clean it in your hands like that, and then you wash it off thoroughly with some sort of saline solution and rinse it off, and then put it into the case. Avoid water, really, at all costs if you can. Just keep away from it. It does have things in it that you don't want in your eye. And I had last week somebody who had exactly that, surfaced up with some amoeboid thing in her eye from contact lens wear, and she was actually wearing the synergized lens, and she was in real difficulty with it. So just be very careful with that. So the recommended technique, as I say, just keep it in your hand and take your time over it. Don't be in a great rush. These are the things that enable you to function all day, every day. Treat them with great respect. You know, they are really vitally important parts of your life. So just look after them really, really carefully. And then the hydration. It's not so critical which one you use to store them in. You could actually use a soft lens solution to store them in, or a gas permeable lens solution. It's not absolutely critical. But once you've got one you're comfortable with, stick with it. Some folks are a bit sensitive to some and others. Some folks like gloopy ones. You know, like Boston's quite gloopy. And then other folks like it kind of watery. They don't like it too thick. Others like it like visco tears, big gel, and you put the thing on your eye and you really feel it slobbering it. And so it's just a personal thing. It doesn't matter really which one you use. Just use one that you feel you're comfortable with, but try and stick to it. Don't just go for who's got a 2 for 1. You know, that's not what should determine what solution you're buying on that particular week, because some folks can find some they're not so happy with. So once you've got a good one, stick with it. So that's it. Well, thanks very much for the opportunity of being with you again. Nice to see you, and I'll be around for the rest of the day and happy to chat with you. Thanks very much.